Well, hello, and a warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn. I'm delighted to be joined by George Szamuely, Lawrence Fox, and Errol Musk. How are you, gentlemen?
All right,
We're
thank you.
very good, Andrew.
It's
Very
good.
good,
It's good to
thanks.
see you. Well, only a few days left before the 2024 US election. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, they're nearly tied, according to the polls. I know you would dispute all of that, Errol, every time we talk. That Elon has been out on the road with his new best buddy, Donald Trump. Madison Square Gardens, what was your take on that, Errol?
Well, I mean, that's a terrific place. I was in Madison Square Garden 8 weeks ago, oddly enough, and yeah, no, it's the place to be. It's a great amphitheater or theater, and yeah, it's great. I'm sure it'll be a wonderful talk. I mean, he's up against it there, the New Yorkers, but let's see what happens.
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things, I mean, you were saying about Elon and his newfound oratory skills, if you like. I think the first time he went out with Trump, you were giving him a few tips. How do you think he performed this time?
Well, it's very good if he doesn't look prepared, and he certainly didn't look prepared the last time, which makes it much more honest. So if someone comes out and rattles off, something and looks you straight in the eye, they've obviously memorized it, and that's not such a good thing, because people are very, very people are extremely smart, and they can pick up, a fraud or something when they see it. So yeah, no, I prefer it if he just is himself. And it does, of course, help to prepare a little bit. I mean, I've actually said, don't ever go on air without actually preparing, and in fact, I'm doing the opposite of that these days. I'm just going on there.
As a wise one. Well, let me bring Lawrence in here. I mean, you've been following the US election so far. According to the polls, CBS, they basically still put Kamala Harris ahead by 1 point. I don't know how that happens, but apparently she's
No.
leading. She's leading amongst women, while Trump has more support amongst men who view him as a strong leader. What's your take on it, Lawrence?
I
Me.
don't think the polls are. I don't think the polls are indicative at all of what is going on. I think they know the Dems know they've lost it, so that what they do is they try and keep the polls as close as possible to help with the steal. Should they go for the steal again? But I think I've been talking to people about this recently. I think you can openly and brazenly lie to someone once, really,
Yes.
and get away with it. You can lie to them once, but I don't think you can get away with it twice. And the MAGA Americans they're not Republicans or Democrats. They're just people who want America to be great again, really.
Yeah.
Those people have been quiet for the last 4 years, and I don't think they'll put up with it again. And if you're looking at the betting odds, which are probably a better way of going because people actually got money on it, it's a proper landslide for Trump. So I would expect nothing more than a landslide. But what will happen? They'll announce the result 12 days after the election itself. And miraculously, a few tens of thousands of votes will appear in very crucial swing state counties.
And you can guarantee that will run and run in the press. What's your take on it, George?
No, I kind of agree with everything that's been said. The polls are clearly not indicative that this is a close election. I mean, because you have to compare where the polls were in 2016 and in 2020. Both times they had Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden very comfortably ahead of Trump, both in the battleground states and nationally. And yet, in both cases, the election was extremely close. It really was just settled by a few tens of thousands of votes. So given this, that now the polls showing that it's neck and neck, then you have to say that Harris is something like 7 or 8 points behind where Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden were. So 7 or 8 points. Now, the pollsters will say, yeah, well, we made mistakes then in 2016, 2020, but we're not making those mistakes now. But that doesn't make any sense, because even if, 1 or 2 pollsters may have made, rectifications in their methods, and then are not making the same mistakes, they can't all be suddenly, we now all know exactly what we're doing. There's still the same problem, which is to find the Trump voter, the elusive Trump voter, which they failed to record previous times. So I think given that Harris, I think, is 7 or 8 points behind where Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden were, I would expect that this will be a comfortable victory for Trump. But then, of course, Laurence is right. What happens then? If this counting goes on, and they say, oh yeah, we've got all these mail-in votes to count, and then we got all, everywhere else, and people are still sending in their ballots on election day, that's when it gets interesting, whether they're going to see, are they going to try to find 500, 600, 700,000 votes from somewhere, which is what they did in 2020. So, it could still go the other way.
Yeah, no, it is interesting, and undoubtedly it will become an issue, and undoubtedly Trump won't let it rest if he doesn't win, because it seems very clear. Elon's done his own poll, hasn't he, Errol?
Yes. Well, look, if you look at the actual polls taken by people like Elon in the US, the voting is about 80% for Trump, and 20 or less than 20, about 15% for the woman, and then 5% undecided. So that's the reality that we have there. What we're dealing with here is a group of people that have no sense of shame. And this is the other side. The people I consider to be another species. They're useless at everything, and they therefore vote in a way that somehow helps their group. They're not interested in, like some famous philosopher said, they'll reduce their country to ashes as long as they can, come out of it with a little bit in their pocket, and they'll be all right, and perhaps rule over it, the ashes. So it's a sad situation. And the last election, simply from the point of view that I'm not, stupid, and I could see there's something wrong with the last election. I actually remember the last election and, went to bed that evening, 11 o'clock-ish, quite confident that Trump had won the election, So I was absolutely amazed when I woke up the next day and saw that Biden had won the election, because in all the voting that I saw, Trump was way ahead on everything. So it was just the biggest shock. And then, of course, we discovered that all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of votes came in at 1 o'clock in the morning from trucks that pulled in. So it's reasonable to assume that these people who have no shame, who have no sense of shame, will do the same thing again. As I say, they don't care what happens to their country. In fact, if their country goes to ashes, they're the sort of first people will be on a plane out of there, to some other place, to go and ruin another place. So, it's a very bad situation that we have in the world at the moment, because this form of democracy that we've got is I won't say easy to manipulate, but they are manipulating it in ways that are completely wrong. Yeah. And I might just tell you that as a city councillor, I once in my third election on the city council of Pretoria, I was up against the management committee chairman, and we had an election. It's a small numbers in those sort of things. I had 6,054 votes, and he had 6,000 votes. And they demanded a recount, and they got a recount, and the recount gave him 656 votes and me 654 votes. So they promptly pumped in 50 votes somewhere, and we all knew it. We all knew it had been done, and we couldn't do anything about it. We didn't know what to do about it. We tried. We just couldn't. It's just what people do. It's just the weaknesses of this particular system, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, we spoke about this on a previous program, that Elon's poll sample is actually about 6 million people, isn't it?
Yes, he polled 6 million people. 77% voted for Trump, about 17% for Kamala Harris, and the rest were undecided, or something to that effect. But it was pretty obvious, what the situation is. But it's the same there. My family live over there, so they tell me, everybody's voting for Trump. So they don't know anybody who's voting for this woman. So, that tells you right away what should happen. But again, these people, as the other gentleman was saying, they don't really care. They'll find ways and keep on counting and find something that they under a box or something that they said wasn't counted before, and in the last election, we saw they were running votes through twice, and things like that. And it's very sad when the people that are doing the counting are actually on the side of, I would call, the bad people. So unfortunately, that seems to be the thing. I just hope that this time people have been engaged to act as, actually good invigilators, or whatever you call it, when they do the voting. That's what's needed, to see, and they should have guards at the gates, so that when trucks come in at 1 o'clock in the morning full of votes, they can stop them and see what's going on.
Certainly, as Laurence says, the world's going to be looking at this sort of stuff. The other thing which has happened, it's all become very personal in the last few days. Whilst people talked about immigration, economic issues, particularly about Harris and so on and so forth. And they had about a comedian's offensive joke. They were all complaining about that sort of stuff. Tony Hinchcliffe, he said there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. It's called Puerto Rico. And of course, all the press have sort of launched onto that. What's your take on that, Laurence? And obviously the mudslinging that's going on now.
Well, I think again, it's indicative of. It's indicative of the fact that they know that they're going to lose, because it's all of they're calling Trump Hitler and all of this sort of stuff, and that's just Trump's walking around looking like he knows he's won. I think people know he's won already. She has no inner life whatsoever, Kamala Harris. There's just nothing going on inside of her soul.
No,
so she's used to just having people offer her the question and the answer at the same time. So the minute she has to say anything meaningful, she comes out with these really disconnected, disjointed sound bites that make no sense. And she's there's nothing there. It's the result actually of how utterly stupid it was for Biden to say, I'm going to have a black female vice president, because you're cutting yourself down to about 3% and a bit of the population. And you're not picking from the widest talent bracket. So all of this diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff is now coming home to roost, because the Democrats have got a lame duck candidate, and no matter how much preparation they can do, she's all right at reading off a teleprompter. She sounds okay, but she makes Biden look. I sort of think nostalgically back about Biden and his sort of mental acuity.
Yeah, oh no, you're absolutely right. And I think that was the thing that Trump may have been kicking himself about originally, is that Biden performed so appallingly in that first debate. If they delayed that for a little bit longer, then they wouldn't have had a chance to replace him. What's your take on that, George?
Well, what you said, Andrew, is absolutely right. It was a huge mistake on the Trump campaign's part, because they essentially set a trap for him, saying, oh yeah, let's have a debate in June. Now, that's unheard of for campaigns to have debates before either party has nominated its candidate. And they did it deliberately, because they said they would have that debate in June, and then all the Democrats immediately pounced on Biden, and it was done. I mean, if the Trump campaign had said, no, well, let's once the conventions are over, then we can have our debate, then that's it. The Democrats would have been locked in with Biden. However, I think that she's a weaker candidate than Biden, because Biden, at least, he's been around for many years, and he has forged a bond, however fraudulent, that he's somehow lunch bucket Joe, he's the working man's friend and everything. I mean, no, the guy's in Delaware, he's the corporate's friend. It's where corporations register. So he's always been the friend of the corporations, but he's been very skillful at presenting himself as the friend of the working man. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, they're doing the same thing to Trump, which they've done before. That they did this in 2016, they did this in 2020. Hitler, 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 Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. All of these insults, they're already baked in. People already know this about Trump. So that's really been the problem with the Harris campaign. She launches attack after attack on him. She's unable to talk about anything as to what she's going to do. She's just simply talking, what about Trump? Oh, what about Trump? If you've got nothing to say for yourself, then that's it. No one's going to vote for you. All these accusations she's leveling at Trump, they've been leveled a million times before, by more formidable candidates such as Hillary Clinton. So that's why this whole thing this kind of October surprise of the last few days, in which all these generals have come forward and said, yeah, he's Hitler. He's expressed his admiration for Hitler, even though there's no record of Trump ever having expressed any admiration for Hitler or the Nazis or fascists. Yeah, he said in my company that he really likes Hitler. This is just so pathetic. It's just not going to do anything for them. And this is your last best shot. So yeah, I think they really have nothing.
It was interesting. I was down in Cannes at the TV festival, and we had one of the writers, the deputy editor of Variety, and they were saying that actually Trump made all his money and created effectively by Mark Burnett, who was the person who created The Apprentice. And Trump was originally apparently going to run against Obama, but NBC offered him so many millions that it didn't make sense in that particular side, which is interesting. What I love about having Errol on the show as well, it gives an opportunity to dispel some of the misinformation which is put out about Elon. And Elon's been in the sights of the media at the moment, and Biden himself has said he's focused on immigration for once, and said that Elon Musk worked in the US illegally in 1995 after quitting school. What's the truth, Errol?
Well, he was a student at Wharton Business School, and as a student, he was allowed to work during vacations. It's an allowance that they give students. It was given to all my children who studied there. So they are the authorities then and now, I think, still realize that foreign students can't just sit on their, haunches during the vacation, which is very long. They're allowed to do certain work. They're allowed to work for certain places. And I think they have to get a sort of an approval. I'm sure Elon would have done that. And apart from that, Elon's grandfather was born in the United States. So, from the point of view of lineage, his grandfather on his mother's side was an American-born citizen. So, he's not that far removed from being, an American. And so he wouldn't have been able to work for anyone unless he had as it has been with my other children, unless he has the required, sort of whatever the L1N1 paper or something like that is. You have to have that if you're a foreign student. So I think it's just nonsense. And if he did do that, it would be for a very short time. Until he was able to
throw the dirt around, and obviously Elon's come front and center with this, what I call the bromance.
Yes, they said he's in league with Putin. He's phoning Putin all the time and stuff. And you're right. I was going to mention that as well, because NASA's chief, they've called for an investigation into reports that Musk and Putin speak. Well, yes, it's rubbish. I mean, Elon speaks, he has to, in his position that he's in, he has to speak to the heads of state of all the countries. And in 90% of cases, the request to speak to the heads of state, to the head of state, comes from the head of state, because they are, like your country, England and everything, they want to get some of the new type of factories and stuff built in their country. They all want to have that. And so they're all hoping for Elon's favor in that regard. So if one has to consider that, I do know that Turkey's president went to great lengths to try and entice Elon, I think maybe even successfully, because I'm not sure what will happen, to build the next gigafactory in Turkey for Tesla. And, so he's far more likely, it's far more, likely to say he's in league with the Turkish president than with Putin, but they will obviously use anything they can.
This is what they're saying. It's a national security risk because they're basically the SpaceX relationship with NASA and the US military, that any discussions with a potential foreign enemy is a security risk. What's your take on that?
Me?
Yeah. Errol, yes.
Well, it's rubbish. I mean, Russia today is probably one of the more stable countries in the world. They seem to be right out of all this masses of illegal immigration and transgenderism and sex changes and all that sort of stuff. They seem to be getting on quite well. And you know, I think they actually really represent the enemy that America needs to, or the West needs maybe as well to warrant taxation on the West people for sending of weapons and or arming or paying or buying from the new, what is it called, the industrial military complex going, so I mean there's no Russia, then what's the point of having the industrial military complex anymore? And so I quite distinctly heard the head of the Republican side of, although I don't think he's much of a Republican, Mitch McConnell say on one occasion that people shouldn't, he actually said this, so I heard him say it, people shouldn't be so concerned about sending money to Ukraine because it all goes to Ukraine and comes back to us in the form of purchases for our weapons.
Yeah, interesting point. A minute each from each of you then, although I probably know the answer to this. November the 5th, who should people vote for and why? Laurence?
I think that it's Elon's interjection in this election has been very interesting because you put a lot on the line if you're a businessman to choose a side when you're selling your products to the whole of a nation. So he obviously has sensed, as I think a lot of people have sensed, that if they don't win, that the Democrats are going to stack the Supreme Court, bring in 2 new states in Puerto Rico and DC, and end the filibuster. And that's the end. That you'll never see a Republican ever back in power. It'll be a one-party state. So he knows that, and he knows democracy's finished because one-party state is democracy. And I think, from someone who came from probably more to the left than me, that believed in the foundational principles of free speech, the fact that the Harris campaign want to shut down free speech and are involved in all this demonic stuff to do with the mutilation of children and the removal of First and Second Amendment rights, I think that Trump will have to win, because if Trump doesn't win, then the last 200 and however many years America's been alive will just be a blip in the great success of communism.
Okay, thank you. George?
No, I think any sensible person would have to vote for Trump. I mean, I think if you want the wars in the Middle East and in Ukraine to come to an end anytime soon, I think Trump is the only hope for that. I think Harris will unquestionably just continue with the Biden policy and probably even escalate both wars. And I think even from the point of view of the American national character and American history and the American future, I think Trump is the only hope, because without Trump, I think you're really going to have wokeism throughout American government, throughout American society. You will have really serious repression of free speech, as we already had, and the courts have ruled on that. And the Supreme Court did not overturn any of that. They just did the usual thing of, they had no standing. But the courts have ruled that this was an attack on free speech. And what happens in the United States always spreads to the rest of the world. And the Europeans are going to imitate everything that happens in a kind of Harris waltz America. So there'll be a really serious implications for free speech throughout Europe and the UK. So I don't think it's not a close call. I think, whatever Trump's flaws, I mean, we all know Trump's flaws. This really is a pretty obvious one. Who should you should vote for.
Finally, Errol?
Well, I think Harris is not actually going to do anything as president, assuming this happens. She's just a figurehead, just a figurehead. I mean, or not even a figurehead. It's a puppet president. I think her life that she envisages is one of parties and running around laughing and having a good time. All the decisions will not be made by her. It will be made by a cabal of people that we probably don't really know who those people are. We have a vague idea who they are, but it certainly won't be her making any decisions at all. When they vote for, if people vote this for Kamala Harris, they're voting for this hidden cabal that is aiming at introducing perhaps another 30 million people from the third world into the United States, who have some, for reasons that are very hard to understand, great desire to not have this, you might say, great European offshoot nation to carry on the way it has. They want it to become a sort of a basket case. And why they want that is very difficult for me to understand.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, all very much for joining me on this. George Szamuely, Laurence Fox, and Errol Musk. But for now, it's goodbye from me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.